Welcome everybody. Delighted to have you today to join us for our webinar on marketing and distributing beneficial products to the base of the pyramid. We are talking about a wonderful topic today. We all know that reaching the base of the pyramid is not at all easy, but we have two experts with us who are going to share their experience over many, many years on how to design a willing value proposition and a financial offer for base of pyramid participants. So your webinar today is hosted by the Practitoner Hub for Inclusive Business and by Hystra, and we're delighted to also have Ecofiltro with us today. The presentation is coming from Lucy Klarsfeld, who's a senior project manager with Hystra, who's been looking at this issue across many companies for many years. Then we're going to hear the wisdom of Philip Wilson, who's the CEO of Ecofiltro, which has distributed water filters over 270,000 to date in 4 countries. Please do put your questions in the chat function at any time or join the conversation on Twitter. We're actually going to go through the presentation first with Lucy's findings from their research and comments by Philip, and then I'll be managing your questions in the last part of the webinar, but please put them in at any time at all. First of all, Lucy and Philip, I'm going to ask you just in less than a minute each to introduce yourselves and why you've been working on this topic, how it fits into your organisation, and then we'll head straight into the presentation. Lucy, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. So I'm Lucy Klarsfeld-McGrath. I'm a senior project manager at Hystra. Very briefly, a few words on Hystra. We are a strategy consulting firm dedicated to social businesses and BOP markets. We started in 2009, and since then we've been working with over 50 clients. That can include, for example, large corporations, for example, Total, with whom we've designed their Awango strategy, basically selling solar products, leveraging their brand and gas station network in Africa mostly. Today they're in over 30 countries and they've sold 1.4 million lanterns, I think, which makes them the largest commercial distributors of such products in developing countries. So we're looking for this type of synergies between businesses and social impact. We've also worked directly with social enterprises such as Ecofiltro. We'll have the opportunity to get back to that. And we're also working with foundations or aid agencies to help them see how they can leverage market forces and social enterprises to reach their development goals.
Thank you. Philip.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm, I guess, what you would call a serial entrepreneur. I've done everything from banking to battery distribution to being a worm farmer or organic coffee farmer. About 6 years, I got enlightened and I became a social entrepreneur. So I founded Ecofiltro, which is it's a company that's focused on getting clean water to the bottom of the pyramid here in Guatemala, and we're spreading out to other countries in the region. I have a hybrid strategy where we sell filters to urban families at a profit, and then we distribute to rural families now at a profit, but a smaller one than urban. And our goal is to reach 1 million families in rural Guatemala by the year 2020, and to replicate this in other countries in the world.
Fantastic, thank you. And for those that don't know, the Practitoner Hub is an online platform all about implementation of inclusive business, the challenges, the opportunity, and the good practice that is emerging. Let's move right on next to the presentation.
So to try to make this a little bit interactive and make sure nobody is falling asleep during the presentation, we've structured it with a couple of questions, and it would be wonderful if you could participate. So I think Anne will show the questions in a quiz format. I don't see it on my screen, but I don't know if it's just me or... Sorry, having a problem, says the chat. So, all right, so we're try to think through the question while we're trying to actually put the quiz in front of you. So the question is, which of these statements is true? Solving most of the world's poor's basic needs, such as access to safe water, access to energy, sanitation, and housing, will require much more technology and product innovation. That's the first possibility. Or could largely be achieved by improving existing products' road to market, as life-changing goods exist but do not reach their intended beneficiaries. So we're still not having the poll put up.
We suggest people put their number, 1 or 2, into the chat function.
All right. All right, we seem to have a lot of twos coming out. Well, I have to say probably the title of this webinar might be a little bit helping in that direction, given that we're looking at how to market and distribute products for the base of the pyramid. But indeed, you're right. What we've seen throughout our sectorial research is that life-changing products do exist already, whether you're talking about home improvement packages or improved cook stoves or irrigation pump, water filters, etc. A lot of products that could truly change the lives of people at the base of the pyramid already are out there. But the main problem is that they do not reach their intended beneficiaries, families at the base of the pyramid, families living with less than $1.5 thousand per year. So why is that? It's mostly because the downstream chain is broken. The marketing, sales, financing, after sales do not happen as they should. This is due to several issues: the lack of cash of these families that prevent them from buying directly the products, their high risk aversion, we'll get back to that, the need for replacement parts and the fact that they're afraid not to find them if something goes wrong. So that's on the side of the customer. And then on the side of the companies, they know that these markets represent individual small transactions, and that these customers, a lot of which are rural, can be very hard to reach due to poor infrastructure and geographic dispersion. However, there are some good news, which is that some companies have tried and succeeded in solving part of the puzzle. Back in 2012 and 13, when we started looking into this field, we found already over 15 organizations that had cracked parts of the problem with some level of solutions, either for the marketing, for the distribution, for the sustainability aspects. You can see on this map the 15 first case studies we did. For those who know some of them, you can see that some are very small NGOs, some are partnerships between large companies and NGOs. Some are very large corporations like the Patrimonial program of CEMEX. And you have also a whole range of products, of durable products, because we really try to understand the commonalities between how you sell a water filter, solar lantern, etc. It's basically the people marketing these products face the same issues. And so the solutions that some have found can be applicable across sectors as well. In addition to that study, which initially focused on durable goods, we then conducted 2 other studies which are relevant to our topic of today. One on marketing nutritious products for the base of the pyramid. So this time not durable goods, but fast-moving consumer goods with a nutritious aspect and hence a social impact goal as well. And we also looked at companies or organizations trying to work with smallholder farmers, typically facing the same type of risk aversion as people trying to sell them durable products or complicated health products. So this has come to enrich our database of cases and our database of indicators on what works and what doesn't, and what are kind of key performance indicators you should follow. And in addition to that, we've also conducted company workshops with over 40 companies, basically benchmarking their performance against this set of indicators we had collected from previous case studies, identifying priority areas for improvement, and then helping them design new sales and marketing approaches, thanks to the ideas we had gained throughout the world. And Philip from Ecofiltro was one of our partners on this and our client on this. So I'm really glad that he accepted to be there today, because I should say, when we do this, it's not just companies learning from us. We also learn a lot each time from the companies we look at, who all have come with something innovative we had never seen before. So on this, let's get into the gist of our topic now. And basically moving to the next question: which of these statements is true? I don't know if the quiz is working again or not, Caroline. No, should I just go on like this?
Yeah, please continue to put either one into the chat function, everybody.
Okay, so one of the reasons why the poor, one of the reasons, yes, why the poor are poor, sorry, is that the BOP is surrounded by lucrative investment opportunities, but they somehow fail to make them, or the BOP have far fewer lucrative investment opportunities than richer people or people in developed markets, sorry. So we have some answers for now, 2 mostly. All right, we have nearly all 2s. Anybody thinking about 1? Type it now or never speak again. Oh, we have 2 1s, 3 1s. All right. Well, actually, 1 is the correct answer. And let's look at why. Basically, what we've found is that the reason why people are actually, in the end, buying these durable products and these innovative devices is because of economics. Because investing in an improved cook stoves when you're spending a fortune on charcoal, or in a water filter when you're spending a fortune on boiling water, or in a solar lantern when you're buying a fortune on kerosene, actually offers amazing economic returns in terms of pure investment terms for base of the pyramid families. And that's something that Suraj Wahab, the CEO of Toyota, whom we can see on this picture, has understood very well with his cook stove. And you can see that his motto clearly conveys that message. It's not about reduce the toxic fume for your wife and children. It's not about get cleaner air in your apartment or in your house. It's about don't burn your money. And that's how he's actually managed to sell over 600,000 stoves throughout West Africa at this stage. If we look like across products, what we've seen that goes also in that direction is that basically we've represented on this pyramid how easy a product is to sell. And basically this leads us to having 3 tiers, 1 for products that save money on existing expenses, which are actually the easiest to sell because people see directly when they start using it how much money they're saving from this, all the way to just providing more intangible benefits, which are obviously also very important, but that people can't feel and get that quickly, which would be better health, education, or also the possibility of future income, but that is not as immediate and tangible as savings on existing expenses. The other amazing thing is, because this just shows, I mean, we've really seen that the easiest products to sell are the ones that save money or generate immediate income. But how much money are we talking about? And it's actually very, very high amounts. What we've computed here, the internal rate of returns of various types of products. So how much interest, the equivalent of interest rate you would get for paying for the product and then getting money back over time, over the lifetime of the product. Improved cook stoves come up with 5,000% internal rate of return. Try to think of an investment you could make that would bring you this type of return, 50 for 1 over 4 years. Probably you can't. The thing with poor people is that they could dramatically improve their economics if they were to make these investments in a way that we can't, because we're already all over-equipped with products, basically. Philip, do you want to say a word?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. So, here in Guatemala, we classified the folks at the bottom of the pyramid, the rural families, in 4 buckets. One is families that buy bottled water. And the second are those that buy firewood to boil water. The third are those that collect firewood. And the fourth are those that don't do anything, and they buy medicine and they're sick all the time. And we found that those that buy bottled water and buy firewood, it's very easy for them to understand how much they're spending each month. And we calculated that if we price the filter in a way that they can pay it off in less than 3 months versus buying bottled water, buying firewood, then we have we have a very attractive value proposition. And those are kind of the folks that are really attractive to us because they become customers pretty quickly. Those that are collecting firewood or not doing anything and they get sick all the time, it's hard for them to quantify the savings of buying an Ecofiltro, a water filter in their home. So the payback is very quickly, and we have found that if you price it in a way that it pays back in less than 3 months, you'll have a customer. But it's our job to communicate what they're spending already, because sometimes they don't know, and that's our job, is to communicate the value proposition clearly.
Yeah. A lot of the companies we have actually worked with for these workshops changed their motto after the workshop into something that directly conveys the savings. And they've seen, just from this simple trick, if I can say, and from asking their sales force to really convey that message, or this is helping people compute how much money they will save, they've already seen some increase in sales. So it's definitely a very powerful argument. And just to, sorry, do you want to add something?
No, and I totally agree with you. Is that you know, if you go in with presenting the Ecofiltro as a life-saving device and it's going to promote health for the family, you'll convince less than 5% of the customers. But if you really make an economic argument, at least in our experience in Guatemala, the probability that they'll buy really jumps up really quickly.
Now, the challenge there is that obviously not all products bring immediate economic benefits, but we'll get back to that later in the presentation. For these ones, which do bring high value, the question is then, if they're such great investments, why do people not make these investments? So what do you think? One of the main reasons why poor people do not buy life-changing durable goods is because, one, they do not know that these products exist. 2, they do not understand the benefits of these products. 3, they do not trust that these products will bring them the promised benefits. Or 4, they cannot afford them. Three, 2 for now. 3, 2, 1. We seem to have more mixed answers here. All right. Well, I think we have a pretty, it's too bad we don't have the statistics where we can count afterwards. It seems we have a pretty balanced set of answers here. What we've seen is that the main obstacle, it doesn't say the other ones doesn't matter, but the main obstacle is really that people do not trust these products. What they want is not a cheaper product, it's a totally risk-free solution, because you're telling them how much these products are going to save them. And they understand that, but why would they trust you? Why? I mean, you're new to the village, they've never seen you before. So very quickly, I'll tell the story of the guys on the picture, and then I think Philip also has an anecdote on this. So on solar products here, you can see a technician from Selco in India installing a solar home system at a customer's house. And you can see that the farmer on the left who bought the system should be very happy. It's one of the main investments he's going to make in his life in improving his home. He doesn't exactly look happy. He looks worried more than anything. And why is he worried? Because he's just spent the only pure cash amount he's going to get in the season, which is his cashew nut harvest, completely on the solar home system. So, you know, he got convinced to make the investment, but now if anything goes wrong, he doesn't even have cash to buy the kerosene he would need for the month. So it really better work. Otherwise, he's going to be worse off than before. And that, obviously, he absolutely doesn't want to happen.
Yeah. I'd like to jump in here. So that's the typical look we get. We distribute our filters primarily through schools in rural Guatemala. And, you know, there's always distrust of what are we doing in the school? What are we promoting? And last week, for instance, when we were in the highlands of Guatemala and we were presenting our program, and we asked the question, who in the audience has heard of Ecofiltro? And luckily, 2 hands went up, and there were 2 women that had been using the filter for several, I think, 2 to 3 years. And they stood up. We asked them if they could stand up and give a testimonial. And that immediately brought up the trust factor, which is real key. It's really key in rural areas of most developing countries. I don't think Guatemala is unique. So if there's a testimonial, you immediately get more attention and more interest from the group of women that in our case are the typical participants.
Sorry, I'm still on mute. All right. So concretely, what does it mean? Because offering a risk-free solution obviously will also mean adding additional services, etc. But the good news is that clients are ready to pay for these additional services if they really solve their issue. Let me just give you 2 examples from this slide. We've represented here the price premium that these clients are ready to pay over the pure cost of the products they're buying for all the additional services that will reduce the risk for them. In the case on the left of Toyola, we saw him on the first slide. They're selling these improved cook stoves in Ghana in particular and other markets in West Africa as well. When they get to a rural village for the first time, they do their demonstration, and the salesperson at the end of the demonstration then says, so you can either buy the stove you've just seen in the demonstration, it's used less charcoal than the normal stove. You can either buy the stove now for about $9, or you can just take it for free for a month. And I come back in a month, and then you pay me not $9, but $10, so an 11% premium over the price of the stove to test it for free. In addition to the stove, I'll also give you the little box that you can see on the picture, which is a very simple tin can with written Toyola box on it. And I give you this box, it's like a piggy bank. Every day you're not going to need to buy charcoal anymore because you've saved some charcoal from the day before. You put the money from the charcoal in that little box. And when I come back in a month, we'll open it together and we'll check that you've really saved the money I'm promising you will save. Obviously, and I guess you would probably do the same thing, 90% of rural clients decide to go for that 1 month test and be able to check for themselves that the stove really works. If we're thinking about it in terms of credit, a 1 month credit, and so the 11% premium is taken as an interest rate, this corresponds to a 311% interest rate over 1 year. So it's huge. But people are ready and happy to pay for it because they really feel that it's changing their... basically, if it doesn't work, they can always give it back and not pay. The second example is that of Patrimonio Oil on the right. So Patrimonio Oil is a program by Cemex in which Cemex sells not just cement bag, as they started doing initially, but everything a poor urban family will need to really make sure they're going to complete their home improvement project. Interestingly, when Patrimonio started looking into these markets of relatively poor households around Mexico City and in particular, they initially thought, you know, these guys are poor, we need to lower the unit price of our cement bag. And they did half-sized cement bags, so 25 kilos instead of 50 kilograms at half price. The market completely crashed. People didn't want to buy these smaller bags because they actually like to buy the big bag and put it in front of their house to show that they had been able to buy the big bag. So that didn't work. So they went back to the drawing board and thought, okay, if we really want to sell to these clients, what can we do to help them? And they did a whole sociological study to really understand what were the obstacles to their clients building an additional room in their home. And they realized that these people were faced with all the points that are written here. So they didn't really know how to build this extra room. So that they made a very poor construction design additional room. Over the time they needed to build their additional room, the material price increased. And so it cost them more money than they would have thought at the beginning. There was a lot of waste from theft of damage because typically they would buy 1 bag of cement when they had the cash and then they didn't have the cash to pay for a mason. So they would leave the bag outside of their house and it would either rain or it would get stolen. And finally, they lacked the saving discipline or, there are so many other things that took precedence that it took them in the end 4.5 years to complete a 10 meter square room. 4.5 years for 10 meters square, that's 2 meters square per year more or less. So it's really very slow. So they decided to create a program which offers services to counter all these issues at once. So when the client registered for Patrimonio Oil, they see an architect first who helps them choose what type of design they want for their room and help them get the basic maps to do it. They get the precise estimate of all the construction material they're going to need to do this. And they get all these construction materials from Cemex, not just the cement, but everything they're going to need. They get a pay plan of 70 weeks, and they just know all they have to do is to deliver the money every week for 70 weeks at a Patrimonio Oil office. And then they get delivered in phases. And if at one point they don't want to get delivered because they don't have the cash for a mason, they can ask for a postponed delivery. And Cemex keeps the material for them stored in a safe place. With all this, they basically, within 70 weeks, so within 1.5 years, they managed to build their extra room. The program has a repayment rate of 99.7%, I think, so amazingly good repayment rates. And I think they've served over 500,000. I say I think because at the time we did the study it was 350,000, but now I think they've passed the 500,000 mark in terms of number of clients. And by the way, it's also the most profitable sales channel for Cemex, because they don't just earn the margin on the product, but also this 26% premium on all the products, on all the products they sell, and the margin on the additional products that they include in the package. So this can really be a win-win, reducing the risk for clients and increasing the margins and revenues for the company.
Yeah. And I'd like to add our experience at Ecofiltro here in Guatemala. Our go-to-market strategy is through schools. So we donate one filter per classroom and one in the kitchen. And we deliver to the school, and then we present the product. So kids start using the product, and they tell their parents how great the product is. But when we have the presentation, and we would present how they can have this filter in their home, we weren't getting a lot of people signing up, even though we would give a 10% discount if they paid for it up front, or 3 monthly payments. And so one of the things we came up with, actually one of Hystra's advice, which we implemented 3 months ago, is we said, okay, what if we provide a 2-week free trial period where the families sign up, and the next day we deliver the filter to the families that signed up for the free trial. And it's been extremely successful. We've had a 50% increase in families that actually buy after the 2-week free trial. And we found that 2 weeks is enough time for them to see how much they save on bottled water, or buying firewood, or even collecting firewood in some cases. And so we've gone up 50%, a little more. I think it was like 53% versus what we were doing 4 months ago, which was just offering it without the free trial. So it's really important that it be a risk-free solution. And we're taking risk because the filter goes into a home and it can be damaged or misused. But right now, 93% to 95% of those that try the filter in their home actually buy. So for us, it's a new strategy. All our field reps in the countryside, their main goal is to get the filter inside the home for the 2-week free trial, because we know if it starts being used, they're going to love the taste of the water. They're going to see the economic benefits right away, and then they're going to become customers. So I've become a big believer in the 2-week free trial, which is basically making it a risk-free purchase for the bottom of the pyramid folks.
So we've seen a few extreme examples, including that of Philip with free trial and taking all the risk as the company, but these all work well. There are other ways to convey the quality of the product and its risk-free aspects, one of which is to offer premium products. I got 2 examples here, Hydrologic on top, which also sells water filter, but this time in Cambodia. They have 2 versions of their water filter, a basic one at $14 and the other one at $24, which you can see here. Very interestingly, the one that sells best is actually the one, the more expensive one. And if there is credit offered, because $24 starts to become a pretty expensive sum for these areas, it's not just a 2-for-1 ratio, it's actually 90% of the clients who opt for the more expensive version of the product. Now, what does this mean for us? Like, imagine you've been convinced that this water filter can save your kid's life, right? Not even talking about the economic benefits here. And we are given the choice between one filter at $14 and one at $24. It's a little bit like if in our world, if I can say, or developed countries, you know that you're suffering, which I obviously wish to nobody here, but let's say one of us is suffering from a horrible disease, and you know that the only way to cure it is to go and see a very specialized doctor. You have 2 of these doctors, one costs $500 and the other one $1,000. Which one are you going to go see? Most likely you're going to opt for the expensive one because you want to make sure to make the right decision, because it can really change your life. So here again, the price premium can actually represent not just a status aspect, but also a way to really be reassured. If you've decided to make the purchase, you really want to make sure that you're making the right one. The second example goes more into the sense of the first of the first idea. It's from Sunny Shop in Cambodia as well, which were selling latrines. They were basically just supplying the latrines and then letting people choose the shelter they wanted to put on top. And people could basically build a very simple natural shelter for their latrines for about $5 when the price of the latrine was $40. Or they could build a more complete structure, but obviously that's more expensive, $50 to $200 for a hard structure around the toilets. And 80% of clients actually prefer to wait until they had the cash, which usually that didn't happen, unfortunately, to purchase that second option rather than get a latrine, but with something that didn't look so great and maybe wasn't going to hold up to bad weather events, etc. Since we did that study, we've actually been implementing a pilot where we offer the second solution, so latrine plus zinc and cement shelter. The complete solution is around $200, and so we've also implemented some credit with it, and it's actually been working very well. Families, it's basically the same principle as what we saw before. Instead of just supplying the latrines and letting them do whatever they can for the shelter, we really tried to advise the partner we've been working with to build that complete solution and offer the latrine plus the shelter plus the financing solution plus the network of masons who can build it all. And that is what people want, because they know that when they pay their $200, 2 months later, they have a working toilet built by a mason. If there is an issue, there is a customer care service, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just add something here, Lucy. I think it's all about aspirational. You know, everyone wants to aspire to a better life or to buy products that look nicer. And I just want to give a quick example that we experienced in Mexico 2 months ago. We were focused on the urban slums outside Mexico City with our water filters in that country, and you know, the low cost unit is basically a filter inside a plastic bucket with Ecofiltro on it. And the majority of the families rejected it because it didn't look good in their very, very humble homes. And so what we did in Mexico was we designed a bucket that looks beautiful, a very, very beautiful. It doesn't look like a bucket anymore. And immediately the acceptance went up. It's something that looks really nice in their kitchen, and they actually like showing it off. So, you know, the very poor are very aspirational, and you know, you want to provide a product that looks really, really good. And here in Guatemala, we're actually in the process of redesigning the low-end product, because we think that we're going to have a lot more customers if it actually looks nicer than a plastic bucket, which it is right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. The design is part of that holistic solution as well. So having something that looks good and that people like to look at in their home does make a difference. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about durable goods here. I just want to make a quick point about the fact that people are ready to pay more for products they perceive as better is also true for FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. Here we've represented how much more people are ready to pay for fortified food for their children versus very basic flour without any fortification. The 4 examples here are all from Africa, and they're all companies, social businesses that are managing to sell over 10,000 meals per month for children. And you can and to low income families, I should add. They're not at all targeting the same like richer clients than the typical high-level brands whom I won't mention do. So what we've seen is that even in these relatively poor neighborhoods, the parents are ready and willing and actually paying for like 5 to 8 times the price of this basic flour for products they perceive as better for their children. Because once you've convinced them that it's really important their children get the right macronutrients, again, they really want to make sure they get their children the best they can afford. So pricing, trying to get the product cheaper is not the key to reaching these markets. It's really offering them something they believe in and can trust, and through a holistic solution. There's one last thing that people are also ready to pay for, which can be useful for products that are not necessarily bringing economic benefits from the start, which is convenience. Convenience is really something we've seen poor clients ready to pay for, or something that can accelerate the adoption of the product. 2 examples from our nutrition study here. One is Nutrizaza, which is a social business in Madagascar selling porridge, fortified porridge for children. They have several distribution channels, one of which is this woman in red you can see on the picture, who is basically delivering warm porridge at the doorstep of mothers and hence children every morning at the time of breakfast. So it's very easy for the mother to just buy the right dose for her kid at the right time when the kid is crying because he's hungry. And this type of distribution network, as opposed to having a retail network where people have to go and buy it themselves and then make the special meal for the little one, etc., really accelerates adoption in a given neighborhood tremendously. And here they reached maximum penetration within 4 to 6 weeks. It typically takes 3, 6 months, even a year, if you just go through retail. The second example is Nandi Water, which actually is called now Nandi Water Community Services, I think. They sell water in these jugs, in these 20-liter jugs at the plant. They only sell with monthly cards, so you have to buy the card at the beginning of the month. But the price per big thing like this, per 20 liter, is very cheap. 3 rupees, which is about 5 cents, if I'm not mistaken, US cent. But the thing is, you can either just go and get it at the plant every day, or you can find local entrepreneurs who have understood that convenience is something people are ready to pay for, even in very rural, poor Indian areas, and that will deliver it to your home, but obviously make a premium out of that. And they typically sell for 5 to 15 rupees per 20 liters, which is 2 to 5 times more expensive, sorry. And people are ready to pay for that. I mean, in some villages, even 90% of the people sign up for these services. On average, it's more around 50%. But so convenience is really something people value and something that should, as much as possible, be included in your holistic package for your clients. That's all about holistic solution. Question 3, and the last one for this presentation. We're now going to talk about financial solutions for the durable goods we've been discussing. So the best way for a distributor to help clients finance the purchase of durable goods is to work with a microfinance organization, and so on, work with NGOs that can distribute the products for free or partly subsidized, answer 2, or sell the product directly on credit by offering financing in-house, answer 3. We got a couple of 3s as first answers. 1, 2, 3 is cheating. You can't answer that. 3 is not possible at all. Okay, a lot of 1s coming in. Lots of 1s. All right, 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I think we probably got a majority of 1s. What we've actually seen and heard repeatedly from practitioners is that it is indeed 3. Financing is best done in-house. Why? We're going to discuss it, but in-house financing can basically provide a lot of value to consumers, help reduce operating costs, increase revenue for the company, and help it reach more clients. The example you see here is from Patrimonio. Maria, the woman you see on the picture, and her daughter are building an extra room in their home, as you can see, thanks to the Patrimonio program. And let me explain a little bit how the financing works. It's the ladder you can see on the right here. Basically, the way the program works is the first time you come to register to the program, you only have to show your ID and to pay the first deposit, which is about 240 pesos, or was at the time we looked at it, so between $15 and $20. I'm not sure of the current exchange rate for the week. And then all you have to do is come back every week and pay that $15 to $20. From week 5, you can get your first product delivery worth 10 weeks of material. So you've paid for 5 weeks and you get 10 weeks worth of material, or the equivalent of the little credit you can see on the right, the green part. So 5 weeks credit. Then when you reach week 10, you have to pay 2 more weeks in advance. And at the end of these 2 extra weeks, there you get again 10 weeks worth of material. So in effect, you get 8 weeks of credit. And then this grows, and at the end of the program, again, you have to pay only 2 weeks in advance to then avail 20-something weeks worth of material. So as you prove that you're, I was going to say faithful, but that's probably not the right word in English, but that you can pay on time, you get more and more benefits. You get, so the company trusts you more and more, and you are also more and more happier and happier, because you get something a bank would never have given you. The only collateral, there's actually no collateral, the only thing that's been requested of you to do this is to prove you could pay on time 5 times and to show your ID. That's it. As I mentioned, we'll go back to this example later. Why is credit important? So obviously, if we look on this graph, we've represented the unit price of some of the products we've looked at and the maximum penetration they reached in a given area, let's say in a given village where they are, or a given neighborhood where they are present. Obviously, for products that are around the $300 to $1,000 range, which would be solar home systems or home improvement, the only way you're ever going to manage to sell these products to the people we're talking about is with credits. And they can reach around 20% penetration with this because they remain relatively expensive products. Now, the more interesting thing is what happens with the cheaper products below the $50 or even $20 range on the left. So on this, you can see that without credit, which are the little squares, you can reach 30 to 40% of penetration. Now, the same products around these price points with credit can be the type of scheme that we were mentioning for Toyota before. So if an actual free trial with an additional amount to pay if you choose to go through this free trial, or it can be 3 months, 6 months, typically no more than 6 months for products that are that little expensive. So these same products will reach 60 to 80% penetration if they're sold with credit. This difference is not just showing that you're reaching also poorer people, but when you provide this type of credit, you're basically telling your clients, listen, if you're not happy with the product, you just don't pay me and I lose. So obviously, I want you to be happy because otherwise I know you have some leverage on me. So this kind of I hold you, you hold me really tight relationship is really what helps push this penetration to the 60-80% range, because again, it lowers the risk, the perceived risk for the client. So concretely, we have 3 examples here of the benefits on one side for clients and on the other for product and service providers of doing financing in-house. For clients, the fact that the person selling you a water filter or an improved cook stove or a home improvement package is giving you the credit directly means you're not going to have to go through all the collateral credit history proof that a bank or a microfinance institution will request from you. And as I just mentioned, it lowers the risk of product issues because as a client, I know I can stop paying if there's any issue. And so, or I can force the provider to solve my problem. For the product and service provider, it's a good idea because it has low default rates. All the examples we've seen, they're above 95% repayment. As long, obviously, as the product you're selling is a good product that doesn't have issues, because otherwise your client will stop paying. It can be a profitable activity. In the case of Patrimonial, the interest rate from the credit definitely participates in the fact that this is their most profitable sales channel. And it has low operating cost because you'll need to go back to these villages and do some kind of maintenance or the next round of sales in any case. So it's actually easy to get your own sales force to collect the money whenever they go back. And it's even becoming easier in some parts of Africa now with mobile money, etc. So 3 examples. We discussed the Patrimonial Oil one. So with the 70-week loan they offered, paid weekly at Patrimonial Oil office, this plus the other services they offer represent a 26% price premium over the pure price of material. The only thing you have to do as a client is showing an ID and paying the first 5 installments up front, and they get a 99.7% repayment rate. Then, yeah, you want to say something, Philip?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that isn't explicit here. We've had 2 experiences with MFIs, and we're trying to make a sale to the bottom of the pyramid. And MFIs tend to take a lot of time. There's paperwork, there's bureaucracy, and you lose sales. When, if you go in to buy a car in France or Canada and you're excited to buy a car, but the financing is going to take 2 weeks. Many times people go on to the next opportunity. And we were finding that, the MFIs that we were dealing with, they weren't that excited to provide lots of filters to these customers in rural Guatemala because of how long they were taking. And so we stopped doing it, and our sales shot up because we immediately, we had two options, paying upfront and getting a 10% discount, or 3 monthly payments. And we could make that decision right away. And you're right, Lucy, it increases the credibility of the product because you're willing to give them the filter for a third of the price. And if they're not happy, well, you're not going to get paid those other 2 monthly payments. So it's all, for us, it's all about speed. If you do internal financing, the decision is made right away and the sale is made. And MFIs, it just adds that one more step that will reduce your sales in rural areas in developing countries.
I see that the time is running very quickly, so I'll try to finish. Thank you for your example, Philip, which is very relevant and makes the other ones probably less necessary as well. But so very briefly, I'll mention Grameen Shakti because it's a very smart model. So they're distributing solar home systems in Bangladesh, and they've sold over 1.5 million of these solar home systems with the loans that can go from 1 to 3 years. And the very smart thing they did is that the installments was collected by their technicians doing visits monthly. And they didn't call it credit, they called it a monthly service charge, which included the maintenance, the interest, and the capital that they still had to pay. So when the person coming to check that your system works is the one collecting your payment, that enhances or improves even your perception that you know that the product will keep working as long as you keep paying, because that technician is the person that comes to collect the money. And so similarly with this system, they managed to get 95 to 97% repayment rate, and we're talking very poor areas of rural Bangladesh. So it's not the easiest places to work in, and it's products that are typically above $100 as well. I won't get back to the Toyota example, and I'll pass this given the time. Just very briefly, why is working through MFIs not necessarily the right solution? In terms of benefits, it's true that it brings easier access to customers, that you get potentially a faster penetration if you do the initial sales pitch with the person from the MFI whom people already trust. And it can lower your commercial cost if your partner is good, and if the MFI has a sufficiently large reach to justify the cost of initially negotiating with the head of the MFI to get access to his clients, etc. But it also raises a lot of questions. One is how to avoid customers being pushed into buying, because when they see this guy, the only guy who's ever trusted them to do a loan, telling them you should buy a water filter, they might buy and not really have understood why they're buying, but they don't really want to get the guy from the MFI to not like them. And this kind of behavior has actually created a lot of cases in which over 60% of the clients who had bought, it was also a water filter in that example, over 60% of these clients weren't using the filter anymore after 1 year. And it wasn't a maintenance issue. They just didn't see the point. They hadn't really been convinced to use it. They just bought it because the guy from the MFI told them to. Second issue, how many target customers are served by MFIs? So that's growing, which is good news, obviously, but it's still only 20% of the base of the pyramid who has access to an MFI. So that means you're by definition leaving the other 80% alone. What proportion of MFIs can become effective partners? A few companies we've worked with had indeed managed to set up great partnerships with MFIs, but typically it takes them 10 to 20 trials and negotiation times with the head of the MFI, et cetera, to get one working. So it means a lot of fixed cost and high-level management costs spent on, in the end, not getting so many results. And the last question, how to effectively handle default payments and be paid for it. Because what happened for some of the people we've seen working with MFIs is that they were really having issues getting the repayment done. But for example, if the bank working with you tells you, okay, your clients are not paying, so I'm going to stop giving your new clients loans, you as the service provider are the one who are going to have to go back to your clients and tell them, you have to pay, because otherwise I won't be able to give you this product to other people. So in effect, you're doing the work of that MFI or that banker of going back to the client and getting the money back, which is what the interest rate should pay for, except who is getting the interest rate? It's not you, it's the MFI or the bank. So it's really kind of a lose-lose situation where you have to do all the bad work or difficult work of getting the money reimbursed while you're not being paid for it. So I'll stop here, and I think it's time to take questions. So these are the 3 lessons learned we got today. It's in this weird shape because it's actually part of a much wider exercise and lessons learned we've had, some of which we'll discuss in the next webinar. And on this, I'll leave it to discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, both Lucy and Philip. We have one question that's already come up, in fact, from 2 different people. I think you were very persuasive as why to use in-house financing instead of MFI financing. But could you both say a bit more about how a company actually starts doing that, the investment they need to make, the risks they need to take? One question came in from a sanitation business that is interested in what you said, but how? How have you seen companies do that?
Do you want to answer, Philip, for Ecofiltro?
Go ahead first, and I'll follow up.
Okay. So that's a very good question. And obviously, the key question then becomes, how do I get the financing to do that myself? Typically, what we've seen is that if you create the right type of products and you start doing financing from the start, for products like water filters or cook stoves that are relatively not so expensive, like $50, even a small company can take this as part of its inventory cost while growing slowly. Like, you expand your portfolio as little by little. One of the company we saw in DRC selling solar lights, what they would do is they would do 3-month campaign to sell their solar lights, and then 3 months where they would just collect the payment and basically replenish their working capital, and then do the next session, etc., until they found investors who were willing to lend them the money to have enough working capital to grow. So obviously, working capital does become a barrier to growth at some point, but for the initial getting the thing started and checking the system and checking that it works and that people repay and they're satisfied with the service and getting that holistic offer, companies manage to do it by themselves. For more expensive products, typically the companies that do that work with partners who are able to finance their working capital from the start, because obviously when you're selling a $200 product, be it a latrine or a solar home system, you'll need to have the working capital lines to do that. So in these cases, it's true that these companies are typically backed up by larger entities, be it the World Bank lines in the case of Grameen Shakti, that they got through ITCOL, which allowed them to finance the solar home systems. In the case of the company I mentioned doing these latrines, it's actually a large FMCG company that sees the fact of building latrine as an opportunity to sell more FMCG products for the latrines as well, who is participating in the initial working capital.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the way we do it at Ecofiltro is so our go-to-market strategy is through schools, and we have many partners, from Visa to Swiss government to Coca-Cola. They buy the filters up front for the schools. So they give us the money in December, and we have to deliver them over the next school cycle, which is January to October. So we have the funding up front for all these filters, and we deliver on a monthly basis, and that gives us the cash flow necessary to provide financing. And we only provide 3 months. So, we get our money back within 3 months, so we don't extend longer than that. Another thing we do, which is kind of unique to Ecofiltro, is we have a hybrid strategy where we sell high-end filters to urban customers, which pay up front, and that in a way helps our cash flow as well in rural areas.
Great, thank you. Really interesting. Could you also say something about the skills involved if you're going to take on in-house financing? We've had one solar home system company ask specifically about the skills needed for loan processing, and they need to hire someone with a lot of experience to make sure that they can do that. But I think in general, it's not just about having the cash for in-house financing, but how do you adapt the skills to manage that?
Yeah, this is a really big point for us. We track all our repayment rates throughout Guatemala now. And, you know, when we do a good job of selecting our community representative in each community, the repayment rate is quite good. And that person is not only our representative, but is an aftermarket, has become an aftermarket sales support and service representative. So if there's a problem with the filter, they're there. If someone needs a spare part, where they have several spare parts in their home. For us, it's all about choosing the right community representative, because in our model, we make the sale through the schools, and then that person represents us, you know, for the next 5 years. So when we have good people, we've selected good people, our repayment rate is high, and we have further sales. When we don't do a good job, you know, the repayment rate is lower, and it's not a profitable activity for us. So it's all about choosing the right profile, and we're trying to get better and better at doing that.
Philip, before you come back, Lucy, can I just interrupt you, Philip, to clarify something you said earlier, because you said you have some funding upfront, as well as the funding that you do on after the 2-week trial and the credit. Someone has asked, does that mean your upfront funding is basically donor funding? Are you reliant on donor funding? Are they donors or are they customers?
Well, they're corporations. So, you know, lots of people like our model because we make the rural families pay for our product, and we're sustainable. And so corporations like, let's take Visa. So Visa likes the fact that they're going to buy a filter from me, I'm going to install it into a school, and I'm going to use that filter to get a lot of families in the community to buy the filter for their home. So it is donor funding in a way, but it's mostly 90% of the organizations that buy the filter for the school program are corporations that want to give smarter. You know, they don't just want to give a donation to fund overhead. You know, they want to buy a filter for a program, in our case, a school program, that's going to allow for potable water to penetrate into a rural community quickly. And that's what we offer.
So they are buying your product, but on behalf of the school as a way of doing good, and that's what frees up your cash flow. And sorry, one specific question on what you just said before we come to you, Lucy. The question about who processes the loans, you're saying that's someone who becomes an after-sales marketing agent. The solar home company person who asked that said, so does that mean we need to get some of our distributors to be able to do the processing of loans? Now, does that work if you've got existing distributors and you try and get them to start processing loans?
That's a very good question. So we're actually going to be discussing part of this in not next week's webinar, but the following one on distribution. What we've seen is that to distribute this type of products, you need your in-house sales force. So going through distributors won't do the trick, because then it gets really messy, basically, to start to try to get them to do financing, especially for products as complicated as solar home systems. You can totally sell through distributors for richer clients, but if you want to go to the base of the pyramid, for which you will need to do credit, you'll need your own distribution system all the way to the client. And we've worked with quite a few solar home system distributors. Some of them had tried distributors, had tried external distribution networks. Some of them had tried to set up franchise, so still relatively independent. It didn't really work very well in terms of sales, and even less so, and that was a cause why the sale weren't picking up in terms of client satisfaction. Because you really need to have to make sure your client is satisfied, to make sure he gets the holistic offer you've designed, and for that you need control over what you're doing, and for that you need your own distribution system. And it's the same, and the credit system is part of that. I'm not saying it's easy. People usually don't like when I say that, because it's not good news. I mean, it's difficult, but it's the way to be sustainable.
Thanks,
Starting the base of the pyramid. Yeah.
You can tell people about the next 2 webinars in just a second. If we could very briefly touch on the last 2 questions, because it is almost on the hour, and we should sign off on the hour. One person has said they are doing well to sell the durables, but they can't persuade people so well to buy the consumables, the refill cartridges. Do either of you have any tips on that? And secondly, a very specific question: pay-as-you-go is working well for payment for credit in solar home systems. Have you seen it working well for other products? Lucy, over to you first, and then Philip for the final comment.
These are both very good questions. So on water filters, the fact that people don't want to buy a replacement is a bad news, because that means they weren't completely convinced the first time they bought it. Otherwise, they would buy again. So there's probably something missing somewhere in the offer. Something that wasn't conveyed right, or they don't see the full value of buying the additional cartridge. One thing we've done with the company on that is to suggest that instead of selling the filter, say, for $20 and then the replacement cartridge after a year for $10, they sell a package for $30 or $35 to include financing as well, with the filter, plus you get a free cartridge after a year. And that way, it's all about thinking about, again, getting that holistic offer that minimizes the effort the client has to make to use your product. If you sell everything at once in a package with the credit, because then obviously you're increasing the price of the product you're selling, you can get very good results. One of the things we've done also with that same company is selling the filter through a utility. So basically, the water utility in the Philippines accepted to first acknowledge that the water they're selling is not fully drinkable. And second, offer the financing mechanism, because given that they already charge clients every month for water, adding a line to the water utility bill for the filter allows to very easily collect the money, and for whatever amount. I mean, people don't really care whether it's $4 per month or $5 per month. They have to pay in addition every month. And the guarantee they have is that initially they get the water filter, and whenever they'll need a replacement cartridge, they'll get it. Instead of having to pay first for the filter and then for the cartridge, they just have to pay for the service, which is an extra $5 per month, and that's the end of the story. So anyway, all this to say, there are several ways of doing it, but finding a way that makes it as easy as possible for the clients in terms of using the filter, paying for the filter, not needing to make a new purchase decision in 6 months, a year, can help. And the second question on pay-as-you-go only works, well, there are several technologies, but you often need electricity to make the pay-as-you-go system and the unlocking and locking of the system actually work. So we haven't seen companies purely doing some other type of products using pay-as-you-go, but we've seen some pay-as-you-go companies for solar home systems starting to also finance other goods through their pay-as-you-go system for the solar product, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Lucy. Philip, do you have a word to add on the water filters?
Yeah, I think we're out of time, so I'll take questions. They can email me through the website because I have a lot of content I can share there.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. So let's move on to that next slide, Lucy, because we do have 2 more webinars coming up. This is one of a series. We have one a week for 3 weeks. And Gerald, you've just asked another question, sort of saying, well, gosh, does that mean we need a sales force in the whole country reaching every single person, and how do we do that? And we are going to be looking at these questions, not by holding everyone up today, but coming back to that. So we're going to be looking at how to choose the appropriate marketing approach next week. And then in the third one, setting up that last mile distribution mechanism, which does come to the whole question for sales force. So I hope you've enjoyed today, and I do hope you will join us for those 2 webinars. Finally, we have a page, and Lucy, if we can just go to the last slide. Please do join the Practitioner Hub, where you will then get our regular monthly newsletter, which is on a theme, and all our webinar invitations. There is a page on the Hub with the information about today's webinar, and we will be putting the video recording of that and links to that and the presentation very soon, if not immediately after this. Several people have asked for the slides. You will find those there. So with that, I want to say a huge thank you to Lucy and Philip for your time and for your insights and for sharing so much wisdom gathered over the years in so many different situations in the space of about 61 minutes. It's very impressive. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to the participants for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.